I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
I started writing my book for you that captures the story cycle system in 2014, and I finished it, or so I thought, in 2015. But, I felt like I needed to still proof out the process that I detailed in the book. So I started my Business of Story platform in 2016. I didn't publish the book, and I completely just rewrote the manuscript over the past 8 months. It's now in editing, and I hope it will be published in early 2020. Whew, yeah, you got it. As you might imagine, it's been a ton of blood, sweat, and beers. So imagine my surprise when I get a guest inquiry from a guy who calls himself the global credibility expert, who can grow your thought leadership by writing your book in under 60 hours, publishing it and making you an Amazon bestseller in just 4 months. You be the judge. Is it doable? Mitchell Levy is joining us to share his writing and publishing process and introduce you to a disruptively interesting way to become a bestseller to grow your thought leadership on your particular subject. Mitchell himself is an international best-selling author of over 60 books. 60. I haven't been able to get mine done in nearly 6 years. How does he do it? And how can he help you get your book from between your ears to the eyes and cheers on Amazon in just 4 months? Or is it, as Vizzini, one of my favorite villains in The Princess Bride, one of my favorite movies, would say, inconceivable? Or is it? Here now to show you how is Mitchell Levy on the Business of Story. Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Park, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time, because time is exactly what we all lack. And I know in your line of work, you are about helping business leaders, thought leaders, capture their stories, publish them in a book in just over 4 months, apparently. You've had a lot of success doing that, getting them to be an Amazon bestseller so that they can bring more credibility to who they are and what they do in the world. Do I have that right?
So you absolutely have that right. And let me tell it, because I like the way you present it, but let me tell it in my 10 or 15-second story. You can now see when you're telling stories, it has a different feeling. So who do we work with? People say, hey, Mitchell, who are you? Who do you work with? We work with busy, successful professionals who recognize the need for more credibility, and they want it through a book. So what I ask them to do is to imagine that 4 months from today, we've ghostwritten, published, distributed, and made them an Amazon bestselling author, and they've spent as little as 5 hours of time.
But there are so many books in this world. Why do we need another book?
Oh, because the book is irrelevant, right? First of all, people don't read books, right? So it doesn't, and sometimes people actually listen to books. So audiobooks, we do a lot of stuff. All of our books we do in audio as well. It's not about the fact that you expect your audience to read your book. And that's one of the things that authors have to immediately get over. What matters is that you could solve a problem, and the book is a credibility piece that demonstrates that you could solve the problem.
So it's a 350-page calling card, essentially.
Well, for me, I would never, ever do something that's 350 pages. I like 120 pages because I like the spine size.
Mm-hmm. 120 pages. Okay. So how many of these books have you published and produced for people over the years?
We have, as a publishing company, over 800 books.
And it's all around thought leadership.
Mostly, I've experimented elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because, any publisher, it's worthy to experiment in different things. So we have one of our good selling books is a book on the Harry Potter series. We got 3 books now on the, one is the unofficial Harry Potter spell book. We have a couple others. The one we're just about to release is conflict resolution through the eyes of the Potter characters. But those are an exception. Every other book we do, the primary focus of the book is to give the author the credibility they need so that when their prospects look at them, they go, wow, this is a person that could solve my problem.
So how did you get into this business?
Well, that's a great question. It's do we do the, if I'm going to tell a story versus the 30-second approach versus the 5-minute approach, we'll get something in the middle. I have always been involved. I've been in Silicon Valley for 30 years. I've always been involved in what comes next. So what's happening in the world, both technology-wise and where's the culture going? During the dot-com days, I was known as Mr. E-commerce. And what I was looking for after the dot bomb and that business went away and I had a couple of businesses going, I was looking for the next evolution. And the democratization of book publishing seemed really powerful for me. So I picked that up in 2005. And what was interesting is I always thought that my job was to make it easy for people to write their books. And so between 2005 and 2017, that's when we published over 800 books. Now we're closer to 900. But that's when we published over 800 books. And what I could honestly say is I served the wrong audience. That's a long time to serve the wrong audience. And what I always thought is I thought I would make it easy for somebody to write their book. What I realized, so we did both. What helped change my mindset, Park, was 2 events. At the end of 2016, we did a Kickstarter for the online platform I have called Aha That. So we did a Kickstarter and hit 250% of goal. Now, just for those that are listening, if you ever want to do a successful fundraising campaign, you'd have to take a service you offer in real life and offer it at a discount. So we had 20 people who paid us that when they wrote their book, we would publish it. All right, so let's fast forward to the end of 2017. I actually had a TED Talk that I did. And in preparing for the TED Talk, I started thinking about the world differently. And then between 2016 and 2017, I looked at the 20 people who paid us that when they wrote their book, we'd publish it. And you're going to be shocked at how many people actually followed through. 2. Of 20 people, 2 people wrote their book. Now, I don't know about anyone who's listening. My business model is not to sell something that people don't use. That's not the type of person I am. So what I went to 5 of the people who paid and I say, listen, how about you just pay me cost and I'll write the book for you? One person said yes.
What were their reasons for not writing the books?
Oh, everyone had a great reason. Life got in the way. I got sick. Now, by the way, at the time, we had a 3-step writing process. It only take 8 hours to write a book. I don't know what my business model is really going to be, what I'm focusing on, so I don't know what to write the book on. Somebody had a family member die. That was okay. I mean, there's every excuse, quote unquote, seemed legitimate. But what it really meant was that 18 people couldn't find 8 hours in a 12-month period to do something they paid for that would be beneficial for them.
Yeah. So I go back to this idea of I can understand why they didn't write it, the fear, the loathing, the having to find, carve out time to pull your thoughts together. But how do you write a substantial book or a book with some decent content in 8 hours?
Well, nowadays, that's where you can write yourself. What we're actually doing with our ghostwriting stuff, our authors can spend as little as 5 hours with us. So what you have to ask yourself is when you have an actual book in hand, what do you pay attention to? Now, if you're an engineer, you want that 350-page tool. You want to see the details and all that. But in today's information deficit world or attention deficit world, you talked about this in your videos, people don't have time. all you're looking for in the book is you're looking to see, is this the person who I want to hire that might help me with what I'm doing? So the way we present books, the way we present the thought leader is, think of the old school. Remember the old days, Evelyn Wood? You would look at a book, you do the Evelyn Wood
The
speed
reading
reading of the book.
dynamics. Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we're doing the Evelyn Wood speed reading of the expert's brain, and we're putting that into a book format in a way that's easily consumable in the way people want to consume data today. So our books, although they're 120 pages, nice spine size, they're comprised of 7 blog posts and 140 bite-sized quotes. So what's nice about a bite-sized quotes, it's the way people share content on social media. So I have a platform called Aha that has over 800,000 users that are sharing people's quotes. So people, when they write a book, they get put into Aha that. We have 800,000 users who are looking for content to share. So what's really nice is you not only write your book of 140 bite-sized quotes, you not only have 7 blog posts, but now you have the ability, when you press the button, to quickly share on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook.
So you've taken the print process and you put on Aha that and digitize it so anybody can now make elements of your book, a book, very, very shareable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. and so Park, what happened, going back to that story, is I asked 5 of the people if I could write the book for them, and 1 person said yes. And so that's what made 2018 interesting. I was putting the process in place. And then here's the go-to-market strategy for 2019. It's absolutely beautiful because as an expert who needs to demonstrate your credibility, we'll talk about the title of the book. The title of your book, you may find, and your parents and friends may find your memoir important, but that's not the book we work on. We work on a book which represents, I call it the CPOP, the customer point of pain that you solve. Because if you focus on the CPOP, then it becomes very easy for people to say, oh, this person can solve my problem. So imagine what happens.
Give us an example of that and a headline that sets up the entire book. Someone you've worked with, or a couple examples.
Oh, perfect. Happy to. Well, first let me start with mine. So this is a TED Talk I did. And what I'm doing is I'm actually holding the book in hand for those that are listening. So if you want to see what it looks like, go to Amazon and type in the word being seen and being heard as a thought leader. So I did a TED Talk on the talk. I have a book on the talk. And so let me talk about how I might introduce myself.
Now, real quick, you did your TED Talk first. And so did you just take your script and then put it into your book? Or had you written the book first?
No, that's a great question. So TED Talk first. And then because I was thinking that I wanted to add more content than was just in the TED Talk is 17 minutes, 34 seconds. I need to do a book like this. I need somewhere around 2 hours of recorded content. So that's why we do a 2-hour interview. So what happened, I actually interviewed 4 other experts. I interviewed 4 experts for a half hour each. I had my team pull the aha messages out of those conversations, and that's what represents the book.
So it's your TED Talk is kind of the story spine for the book, but then you've got these 4 experts in these different areas, and you're pulling their quotes from them to go into the book.
So I'll share with you my favorite aha message from the book, and then I'll talk about how I introduce myself. So it's aha number 4. So here's what it says. So this is from the book.
Let me read it to him because he's holding it up in a video. Hold it right there. Aha number 4 says, good thought leaders are at the top of the mountain. Great thought leaders are at the bottom, helping others climb up. At good to soul.
So
yes.
The at the end represents that is a guy by the name of Robert Clancy. So, I'll show you Robert's picture for those that can see it.
There's
so
Robert's picture.
Robert has over 500,000 followers on Facebook. He's one of the interviews I did for a half hour. And if you think about that quote, it's really about servant leadership. It's not about you standing on top of the mountain as a thought leader saying, hey, guys, go this direction. It's about you being at the bottom of the mountain, helping people along. And that's where the world is living today. Maybe so you ever been at one of those business meetings, Mark Park?
God, happens all the time. Hey, they put bark on my on my Starbucks coffee cup. So don't worry.
You know what? That'll work.
I actually had checks show up one day not too long ago with my name. Yes, we still get checks here with my name, Pork Howell, Pork Howell. So here's the printer and thinking, I wonder if there's really a guy by the name of Pork Howell. Anyways, I digress.
Did you Google?
No,
So-
I didn't even want to give that any more energy.
So imagine if you were at a business meeting and 30 people stand up and they introduce themselves for 10 seconds. By the time the third or fourth person come, like everyone's saying the same thing. Let me introduce myself. I'm going to say some of the stuff that other people say. I'm going to say best-selling author. I'm going to say TEDx speaker, but I'm going to use those words not as nouns that people do. I'm going to use those as verbs. My noun is the title of the book. So here's what I'll say. Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert, TEDx speaker, international best-selling author of the book, Being Seen and Being Heard as a Thought Leader. Now, if you're actually in the room, I'm holding up a hardcover book, right? Listen to this. Doesn't that sound like it has lots of content in it? So I'm holding up a hardcover version of the book. I do the Vanna White thing when I do the title, where I'm strolling my fingers down the title. And if you're in the room, you're going to say to yourself, hey, wait a second. I need to be seen and heard as a thought leader. Maybe I talk to Mitchell. So the title of the book is the C-Pop. Let's do a couple others.
So let me ask you real quick. You said the noun. You lost me when you said that. Think of it as a noun. Explain that to me.
Oh, well, the most important element that I want somebody to focus in on is the title of my book.
Mm-hmm.
And the title of the book is the book being the noun, the title of the book being the C-Pop, the customer point of pain that I solve.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Right. And so I'll give you a couple others. We did a book with a guy by the name of Nick Temple. Nick Temple is, and this is probably part of the consulting part that happens up front, is what is the title of your book? And what I often say, first question I ask is, who are your customers and what problem you solve? So as Nick's talking, it's, am I talking about my life journey? Am I talking about how I help people? And one of the benefits of a guy by the name of Nick Temple is he is a technology-focused person who's a extremely strong marketeer. So what we ended up having is we ended up creating a book called 5 Checks of Working with a Marketing CTO. And so what does Nick want? At the end of the day, he wants 4 or 5 clients a year that he could actually work with that focus solely on the fact that if you're a business person and you need a partner who can do the technology but also talk to you from a marketing perspective, that's what this title works on. That's what this title does. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've got you. So
Okay.
you really focus on this customer point of pain. So what problem are you solving? And isn't that really what every brand is in the business to do? Problem solvers, wish fulfillers by making that happen.
Actually, thank you. And now that you said that, I'll tell you a story. So when the best way to market in today's world is word of mouth marketing. When somebody else says, if somebody says to you in the future, hey, who can do my book quickly? Hopefully I've given you enough tools and skill set. You got to talk to Mitchell. And if somebody comes to you based on your recommendation, you're my sponsor. You're actually giving credibility. Hey, I've talked to Mitchell. I like how he sounds. I think you should talk to him. What I've done is I've actually told you the point of pain I solve. I've made it easy for you to clarify that messaging. And what happens is somebody comes to you, you now know of Mitchell Levy. But what if you didn't know and you didn't know who to talk to? You'd say, hey, go to Google. What if you go to Google and say, hey, I need to write a book quickly. I want it out quickly. I need to demonstrate my thought leadership. I want to be seen and heard as a thought leader. You know what's going to pop up is my book. When my book pops up and you see that I'm the Amazon best-selling author of a book, Being Seen and Being Heard as a Thought Leader, you're like, oh, maybe I should talk to Mitchell. That's what every business needs to do. That's what every business person needs to do. Where is your expertise? You're about storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So the title of your book, you have many, many books and many things you could do in your head, right? Both current and future, right? But the title of your book is, I need to tell my story so that clients are going to come and buy my service, or clients are going to come and buy my product. And if somebody types in, how do I tell a story that people buy my product, and your book pops up, Park, voila.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I have been spending a long time writing my book, and it's over at an editor right now. But I can tell you, it didn't take 8 hours. It started about 5, 6 years ago, going through the first round of about 50,000 words and looking at it and thinking, okay, this is nice, but I don't know. It feels a little naive, maybe in some areas. I need to proof out some of these premises or is it premise that I made in it, and spent the last 5 years doing that very thing. And so I've spent the last 8 months rewriting it. It's now up to about 55,000 words. And it is a how-to, but it's also about my journey and how I found this, how I, it is a little bit of a memoir in how I had to pivot away from the ad agency world because it just wasn't working for me anymore after running an agency for 20 years, and how story helped me do that and what I do today in consulting, teaching, coaching, and speaking on the power of story literally around the world. But I bring them in this book now, my 10-step story cycle system, which we've used for branding and helping brands grow by as much as 600%, which is such an outlandish number, I even hesitate to mention it. But a client of mine, Aveen Tafoya at Atalante Healthcare, just rang me the other day. We redid her brand, Mitchell, with this process in 2009, launched it in 2010. And in the past 8-9 years, they've grown by 600% because she got her story straight.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I don't know how I could possibly do that, though, and tell that story in 8 hours and in 120 pages.
Well, so here's what's interesting. By the way, very, very nice way. Obviously, you're good at what you do. And anyone who's listening, when you have the opportunity to insert your credibility piece and your anchor that allows people to go, hey, I want that. Park, I want to grow by 600%. I need your service. Anytime you have a chance to do it, you should, because that's the world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
To answer your question, I would never take away from a storyteller and say, hey, don't tell your story that's 55,000 words, because we publish those books as well. But what I will say is, after you've had your run of that, after it's been on the market for a year or two, and all of a sudden you realize, and I'm going to be silly, that accountants need to tell their story,
Mm-hmm.
that, and you fill in the blank, that lawyers need to tell their story, that now all of a sudden you do a book that focuses on how to quickly tell your story to stand out above the rest as an accountant, or how can a lawyer tell a story that people will listen to?
You get very, very market specific, target specific.
And if we focus on that point of pain, guess what? You have a go-to-market strategy. You know who to market to. You know your Facebook ads and your LinkedIn ads to go after. And you have an asset that reinforces. And by the way, any one of those aha messages can also then it could point back to your original book that's for sale on Amazon. It could point back to some of the webinars you have in place, some of the courses you have in place. If you take your 10-step process and create that into an online course, you can take your aha book and have URLs that point back to top of the funnel
Mm-hmm.
for your 10-step process. And so what I'm doing is I'm not replacing the need for that bigger piece. I'm either, for those people who create the bigger piece, this will supplement over time. For those people who don't want to spend the time on the bigger piece, what I say is, well, I'd much rather you take and create your 10-step course, sell that for $2,000, and why don't you create 2 or 3 aha books that then help reinforce selling your course? And that will, so you get the point. There are many different ways to get your brand out as an expert, as someone who's credible. But at the end of the day, the audience you serve, they want to see the book that specifically addresses their pain point.
Okay. I totally get that. So the book I've written, the tome that I've put together, becomes sort of the mothership that then it can breed off of these others, very, very market specific books. Well, let me ask you this then. Since I've got you here, I'm going to ask for some free consulting. So here's what
Okay.
I want to know, how to nounify the title of my book. So right now, my working title, because it's as much of a workbook as it is a regular book. They certainly work together, because it's filled with stories to make my business points, but it also helps any reader take and use the process on themselves if they want to grow their personal brand, or their professional brand. And let me tell you, the two target audiences I'm going at, and I know right now I'm thinking I need just one. Here's what they both have in common. They both understand and appreciate storytelling. Somehow they have a background in literature and arts, but they find themselves in the marketing world, branding world, whatever. So they already know story works. They're just not sure how it works in business. So that's number one. Now, the two clients that we serve in that, especially in the brand building side, are owners, usually mom and pop organizations, challenger brands that have been in business 5 to 10 years. They're typically doing $5 to $10 million in revenue. They're growing. They got a business model that's really working. They're very purpose driven. So they're much more about the impact they're having in the world through their product and service versus just selling a product or service. And here are the three pain points that they have that come down to why they need a story. And I hear this, Mitchell, time and again. I'll get the call. Park, this is so-and-so, and I want to tell you about my company. We've been growing. We're really growing, and now competitors are taking notice, and we have more competition than we used to, and I realize that our brand is not differentiated, even though we're first to market on this. That's number one. Number two, we're adding 5 to 10 to 25 people a month with our growth, and I realize we don't have an internal story that they're all buying into and moving third. And then there's always this pause. And I go, what is it? But I know it's coming. Well, last week I was sitting with my banker or I was sitting with VC and they asked me point blank, what's your story? And I'm embarrassed to say I didn't have one. So I need to go through your process and I got to figure out what my brand story is. That's my number one best clients that can use and really benefit from this system.
Nice.
The second one is a new market that has come out about 2 years ago and it's growing very quickly. Take that same mindset, but now apply it to an executive who is a thought leader, who has made a lot of money in their career, are typically between the ages of 42 and 57. They now realize I want the last chapter or the last part of my career to be significant. And it's either A, I want to be able to rise up through the leadership here, but I have to get my own personal brand story straight, to grow myself as a compelling communicator and influential executive. Or I'm leaving this position. I'm getting away from my golden parachute and I want to go out in the world and I'm looking for, I think, some like this kind of job. And I say, well, you don't want to look for this kind of job. You first want to understand who you are and what your story is and get super focused on that. That will differentiate you, and that perfect job you're looking for is going to probably find you before you find it. So those are the two people that benefit the most from the process.
And for your book, thank you, by the way, that was very, very well articulated. For your book itself, you said that you had sort of a little bit of memoir focus and you had your 10-step process.
Correct. So I start, I have 2 chapters at the beginning. The very first one is very short. It's like the care and feeding of this book in your business. And it says, totally skip the origin story. You don't need it. You can jump right into chapter 1. And even if you don't want to read all 10 steps, because I know, none of you read out there, tongue in cheek. I said, if you just get through one chapter and apply what I'm sharing with you in that chapter, you will grow as a storyteller. Your business will grow as you get more focused. Of course, there's a compounding effect if you do all 10 of them in a row. So I recommend that you do all 10. So go ahead and start now. Don't feel like you need to read the origin story. However, if you want to see the story cycle in action on me, my personal brand, and my business of story brand, then by all means read the origin story. And within the origin story is a whole ton of, while it's talking about what I've learned, I'm sharing a lot of content from thought leaders in this space that I've learned from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How many words do you think the origin story is?
I think the origin story comes in around 5,000 words.
Fascinating. And so the 50,000 words, are they all focused around articulating the concepts of the 10 steps?
Yes. And each of the steps, I take them just as if you're doing your own branding on yourself. Chapter number 1 is where in the world have you been? It's your backstory. It's setting the stage for what is your market differentiator. and I share a couple stories. First, why is this important? Share a couple of little anecdotes of how this works. Share a case study or two of clients that have gone through it and what it's meant for their business, and then say, and here's how you do it. Now do this, this, and this. It'll help you first find that foundational narrative element you need of what is your position statement. What do you do different and therefore better than anyone else in the marketplace? That's chapter number 1. And if they do nothing beyond that, at least they got more focus on who they're for. What's their one thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right. So here's my suggestion. You got 2 books. Now, if you already have an existing publisher and they want you to do 55,000 words, that's fine. But in your case, you got 2 books. Okay. So one book is the one that includes your origin story and maybe 1,500 to 2,000 words for each of the 10 steps. So you end up with a 25,000 word book.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one you give away. That's the one you don't worry about selling. I mean, you sell it, you do the Amazon campaign. That's the one you really focus on. But it's also the one every guest on your show, you send them a copy. Every prospect you want to get on, you send them a copy. That's the one that, and we're happy to do a AHA version of that as well. That's the one that is whetting the appetite of people as to why the 10 steps and the concepts behind the 10 steps. You then take the 50,000 words, which are really your 10-step process, you turn that into a course or you turn that into a workbook. And if it's purely a workbook, you sell the workbook for $500 each.
So I've already got the workbook, and I've had that out there for 4 years.
Uh-huh.
It's really scaled down. So it says, here's a quick little example. Here's the exercise you do, and away you go.
So this is the enhanced workbook, or you record it online and you create it into the online course.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's fascinating is the actual book, typically for the executives you're going after, no one's going to read 55,000 words and no one's going to do that themselves. It's just
right.
So the interesting part is if you turn it into a course, and let's say you sell the course for $1,997. Now, when you pick up clients, you can say, oh, by the way, you get 3 licenses for the course, or people may buy the course separately. You have this book, which is much more consumable. I like 25,000 word books because once again, you get to 120 pages, right? So you have a book that's much more consumable, and you then are referencing in the book the workbook you already have, or maybe that's replaced with the 50,000 word workbook, or you turn that 50,000 words, if you got all that content, you turn that into your online course. And now you have a product that you're selling for $2,000 each, which you could give it as part of your consulting. You give licenses to the product, but you sell it separately. The thing is, if you think about $2,000 and you sell one, it's about $2,000 profit.
Mm-hmm.
How many books do you think you need to sell to actually make $2,000 worth of profit? And first of all, most people never get to make that many book sales. And we're just talking about one sale of your course. So that's what I would think about from a thought leader perspective. Given that you put the time and energy in it, I would just think about the world. So 20 years ago, you took the right approach. Having for those that are listening, I'm holding a book called How Reliable Is Your Product? It's 100,000 word book. It took the authors 3 years to write. And what they do is they use this book to actually sell companies on them doing consulting work for them in this space. So their client are engineers. The engineers need to be convinced this way. Your client is not an engineer. Your client is not going to read this. Your client's not going to read 55,000 words, most likely. So if your client's not going to do that, and your client may actually not even go through the course directly, but your client has somebody on staff that they're going to send through the course.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you totally atomize the content and you use it in a lot of different areas. And I am doing an online course with it now, not for the masses, but for the master classes that I teach that typically start with a half-day session. And then we go into an 8-week deliberate practice program where they are taught the 10 steps over that 8 weeks. And in addition to being able to apply those to their brand and figure out what their brand story is, they grow as a communicator, as a storyteller, because they learn these 3 proven story narrative frameworks that they can then use for everything when they have to start communicating about their brand. You know what I mean?
I love it. You got a lot of stuff going. What I'll add to what you're doing, when you bring people into your story, the potential ability for them to get the aha book to tell their story, or particularly those people who need to tell a story around corporate culture, your first target audience, doing a culture book where you get the employee base to contribute content to a book where they're all part of it. It's that Zappos version. Those make for great, easy reads, easy consumable content. And once those books are available, you now not just share it with the employee base, but you also share it with partners, with clients, with those that you work with.
Right. So coming full circle, that was a long way around my question to here's my working title. And I want you to now, from your point of view, the customer point of pain, my working title is the Story Cycle System. That's my trademark name for my proprietary process. The Story Cycle System, how to craft and tell compelling stories that sell.
And I assume how to craft is your subtitle, or is that part of your title?
Subtitle. Yep.
So how to craft and tell stories that sell.
How to craft and tell compelling stories that sell. I like compelling in there. It adds a little bit more rhythm to it.
Well, first of all, if you take the concept of breaking the book into 2, you have two different things.
Right.
I'm less concerned about the cool 3 to 4 word title. So I would make your title your current subtitle, how to craft and tell compelling stories that sell. And your subtitle, you could put, because I never even put the subtitle on the book, but you want to have it in your SEO. When people hear you speak and they hear the story cycle system, and that gets branded and you have a trademark on that, if they type that in, if you have it as your subtitle, it'll still pop up on Amazon. But the real pain point is how to craft and tell compelling stories that sell. As a matter of fact, given that it's for companies or for individuals, I might do 2 books. How to craft and tell your corporate story so it sells. How to craft and tell your personal story as an executive so it sells.
Yeah.
And those could be separate books. The content on the inside is very similar, but you then focus on the components that are relevant to the target audience. And when you're focusing on the different target audience, what you would say to an executive who wants to branch out on a new level of life is different than what you say to the business owner that needs to basically put energy and put a story and put a name and basically put a feeling of a living, breathing entity into their organization. What you'd speak to that person is different than you'd speak to the exec. So those potentially are different books as well.
Yeah. Interesting. So for those listeners now that haven't written their book, they haven't rolled their sleeves up, they've been thinking about it, or maybe this is the first time they're like, oh my God, maybe I could do this. What is the advice that you give them? How do they get started in your process of getting a book that they can use as a thought leader and then expand upon?
So I will, what I'll say is, let me just give you a URL. It's mitchellevy360.com. So it's my name, MITCHELLLEVY 360.com. You can listen to a customer testimonial or video reel with customer testimonials, adding value. You can actually, it'll bring you to a web page where you can see ahathat.com/author. We have our 3-step writing process. But probably the most important thing, schedule time on my calendar and say, hey, this is who I am. This is where I'm going and what I want to convey. Does what you do make sense? And trust me, I'm happy to say no, or I'm happy to say you're not ready. I'm also happy when the time is right to be able to make it easy for you to have that asset in your hand. So I know you took so long to do your book. That's not a bad thing, but some people 4 months from now, you could be an Amazon best-selling author. Where you, as a business owner, your job, you should be spending time on selling and satisfying your customers and building product for tomorrow and empowering your team, not writing your book. So let us do it for you. Go to mitchellevy360.com, book time on my calendar, or take a look at our websites. And if it makes sense for you, we'll be happy to help you.
Great. And can you give us a quick overview of that 3-step process?
Absolutely. So for those that want to see it, it's at ahathat.com/author.
By the way, where does that name come from? ahathat.com.
It's a great story. How much time do I have? That's a great story.
Before we get to the three things you can do, let's cover the aha that, because it's been bugging me this whole time. Where's that come from?
Well, how much time do I have? 30 seconds?
Yeah.
All right. So for the 30-second piece, we have a platform. It's called Aha That. When I first introduced the platform, it was called Aha Amplifier. So the job of the platform was to take aha messages, short, compelling sound bites that carry weight, and to amplify those in the marketplace. And what happened is, even though I thought aha, people know what an aha is, amplifier, people know what that is, I would assume everyone would know what the aha amplifier does. I was talking to one of my friends one day, and he goes, Mitchell, nobody knows what an aha amplifier is. And if you're a millennial, what do? You want short stuff. You want aha this and aha that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I went back, saw that aha that was available. It was 3 syllables instead of 6. Much easier. If I'm going to have to explain what we do anyhow, aha that is simply the opportunity. You've got a good, compelling message you want to share. You want to share it quickly and easily. That's what an aha that is, an opportunity for sharing your message.
Essentially a meme generator, sharing quotes on thought leadership.
Well, we have 50,000 aha messages and 800,000 users on aha that is easy for you to find content to share.
Okay, interesting. I've created a whole ton of these aphorisms, I call it, around storytelling, such as, you've got to understand the magic if you're going to cast the spell. So learn what you're doing if you want to bewitch people in storytelling. Or one of my favorites that someone commented on the other day is, storytelling is the human default. A crappy data-packed PowerPoint is your fault. I mean, we just have fun with this sort of stuff. So is it that kind of thing? Like you're taking these quips or these thoughts or these...
Absolutely. So Park, if you were following and wanted to write your own aha book and have that converted into a physical book, we would follow the 3-step process.
Okay.
So step 1 is simply 4 questions. So, and you can see this at ahathat.com/author. You can go there and download. It's a 4-question document. And in essence, it's kind of like a book proposal, but it's a lot simpler. Who are you? What's your name? What's your bio? What's the title of the book? What is the pain point you solve? I.e., what is your CPOP? Right? And so you answer those questions. Step number 2 in the process is a single-page PowerPoint, and it's how to write a good aha message. So the specific aha messages you shared were pretty good as is. They're standalone. What's missing is a pointer back to you and something that represents the fact that we're talking about storytelling. So at some point in time, when you don't mention storytelling, you might want to add a hashtag called #storytelling, and now you have context.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a single-page PowerPoint. That's step number 2, is reading that. And step number 3 is an Excel document, and that's where we put our aha messages. So if you wanted to write your aha book, you've got all your components in place. Go there and write it, and basically take the 140 euphemisms, in your case, what you call them, but I call them aha messages.
Aphorisms. But I like euphemisms too. That's good.
All right, aphorisms work, or you want to just call them parkisms instead.
Yeah, maybe that's probably better. Just parkisms.
So when you come up with 140, guess what? You got a book.
And the book would be what? It would be one of the aphorisms and then a little explanation below it?
So the way we do our books, no, it would be, we break our books into sections. So typically we might have a 7-section book. So one of the sections would be the power of telling your story. And then you would have let's just say a blog post on what that section represents. Why do you need to tell stories? Why is that important? And then in that section, you would then have 10 to 20 aha messages. So the book itself allows you to, and we, by the way, just so you know, we print in color. It could have a meme. So it has a meme on one side, a summary for the section on the other, and then 10 to 20 aha messages that are reinforcing your point of that section.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. You have me so intrigued. The first time I've been sold online on my own podcast, I'm going to pull together my Parkisms that I have to date, and I'm going to set up a time with you to sit down and see how quickly I can pull together my aha book with you. It's totally separate from the other thing that I wrote. And we'll see about getting that up on Amazon and see if you can get me to be a Amazon top seller in 4 months. Is that fair enough?
That sounds beautiful. And Parker, my intent was not to
I
tell
know
you,
it.
but I'm excited.
But it's cool. It's interesting to me.
Well,
I want to try it out.
The same as you and I are doing the same thing, is we're helping those that we work with tell a story so that those they serve will immediately see that there's value.
Yeah.
And we're doing it in a slightly different way, and both are good. So I would love to work with you and also introduce you to those people who need to have a better way to tell their story.
This sounds like a ton of fun. I can't wait. Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been a blast.
My pleasure. Thanks, Park. Thanks for having me and participating. I like what I'm hearing. I'm looking forward to seeing where we go.
And so last thing, I just want to make sure it's clear with our listeners, you would like them to go to mitchellevy360.com and or ahathat.com.
Yeah, it's interesting as I could rattle off a gazillion URLs. Ahathat.com, if you want to share content, there's 50,000 aha messages, free to use, free to share. Ahathat.com/author, you can learn what it means to be an author. Ahathatradio.com, our audiobooks. So we take our aha books, turn them into audiobooks. They stream 24 hours a day. And I could say that and then a ton of others. But what I'd rather say, if you go to mitchellevy360.com, it'll reference the social media sites. It'll allow you to book time on my calendar and to learn whether or not it makes sense for you to also be part of this family.
Yeah. Great fun. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to get my aha book going.
Me too. I'm excited.
And thank you all for listening to this edition. If you like what Mitchell had to say and you've got a book in mind, certainly go to his website. Or if you know of someone that you've been prodding along to write a book and you think now's the time to do it, share this episode with them so that they can hear what the process, you meet the man behind the publishing here, and see if they can't get their book out there as being an Amazon top seller in 4 months or so. Could be really powerful. Could be maybe the best gift you ever gave them just by introducing them to this episode. And of course, if there's anything I can do for you, visit me over at businessofstory.com. Just waiting there with a ton of free tools, tips, techniques, and talent like Mitchell to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. So remember to join us next week when we'll have another story artist on here ready for you. And until then, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.